Hey guys, today I want to talk to you about young leaders. I want you to imagine there's this 15-year-old kid in your church, all right? He's goofy, always clowning around and acting irresponsibly. Now, fast forward just a few years. That same young man could be your student pastor. Now, if we only look at him through the lens of today, that can be a pretty scary thought. But if we look at him through the lens of his future potential, it could change the way we look at him and the way we deal with him. If we're wise, we'll start developing those young 15 to 25-year-old men and women as our future leaders. But sometimes the older generation, which I'm one of, holds back from developing young leaders. So today, I want to share 3 reasons the older generation is afraid to develop young leaders and give some solutions to this problem. Hey guys, this is Mac Lake bringing you tips, tools, and techniques helping you develop more and better leaders. This week I went to a church and it was filled with young leaders, and it was so exciting to see these young people being developed and empowered to lead in various ministries. Then I traveled and I spoke at a conference that was primarily older leaders in their 40s to 70s, but sprinkled in the crowd was a few young leaders in their 20s. After I finished my talk during the Q&A time, a 24-year-old young man stood up and he asked me this question. What do I do if my leaders are not giving me the opportunity to lead or be developed? He said, I want to grow, but I feel stuck. What do I do? Now I could tell this young man, he had a humble and hungry spirit. So I gave him an answer, but in my answer, I also looked at the few young leaders in the room and I said, listen guys, I'm sorry. I apologize on behalf of my generation. I know there are times we fail to believe in you and to develop you. That's the reality for many young leaders. So I want to show you 3 reasons why the older generation sometimes is afraid to develop young leaders and give you some solutions. Reason number 1 is we're intimidated. In today's fast-changing, high-tech world, older leaders can feel intimidated by young leaders. We don't always understand the way you think or why you do certain things that you do. And so it's easier for us to avoid you than develop you. And that's not right. It's just a reality sometimes. And so we tend to criticize the young generation sometimes for being impulsive, unorganized, unfocused. But think about it. Isn't that a good description of us at their age? So here's a solution. Sit down with a young leader and ask these 3 questions. What do you wish my generation understood about your generation? What difference do you want to make with your life? And how can someone like me help someone like you? Reason number 2 is we're afraid to let go of responsibility. Many leaders allow their identity to be tied to their responsibility and their performance. And so it's difficult for them to let go because it threatens the security of their identity. So here's a solution. Give your young leaders a leadership task before you give them a leadership title. And as they take on these tasks, catch them doing something right. Get in the habit of catching them doing something right rather than always looking for what they're doing wrong. Practice giving them praise. And here's what's going to happen. As you do, you're going to find that your confidence in them is growing and their confidence is going to grow in themselves as well. So in order for you to let go and share some of your leadership responsibility, don't just look at your leadership, look at your legacy. Reason number 3 is we have a pay-to-play mentality. We think they need to pay their dues before they get the opportunity to lead. I think leaders in my generation are afraid that young leaders have an entitlement mentality, and yes, some do. And for that reason, we're afraid they won't develop the appropriate level of humility, servant spirit needed for strong leadership. And yes, that's a real concern. But avoiding them and letting them age without intentional development doesn't solve that problem. We need to have honest conversations with them. I just tell them, hey, I love you, but you have an entitlement mentality. And as I work with you, I want to help you develop your character as well as your competency. And for that reason, I want us to focus on your humility, your generosity, your teachability, as well as your leadership competency. So just put it out there and be honest about it, because hiding the truth and hoping for change is a horrible strategy. So older leaders, consider this a challenge. Go find some young leaders, believe in them, invest in them, trust them, empower them, and don't forget, eventually release them into the next level of leadership. Guys, thanks for joining me today. I'll see you in next week's video.